Alrighty, good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's installment of the Thirsty for Knowledge Free Business Law web series. A few items before our presenters begin. This webinar is being recorded. A recording will be provided to all registrants and will also be uploaded to the Cibolo Economic Development YouTube channel and social media pages. The chat feature is enabled, so please feel free to type in any questions you may have for our presenters. Their emails will also be provided at the end. For those items out of the way, I would like to introduce our presenters, the City of Cibolo's HR Manager, Kristen Hetzel, and Attorney Adelita Cavada with Adelita Cavada Law. Thank you both so much for presenting today. Please feel free to take it away.
Good morning, everyone.
Oh, good morning, Kristen. I thought you would say a little bit more. I am Adelita Cavada. I'm an attorney here in South and Central Texas. First, my quick disclaimer, although I am an attorney and you are getting advice, or I'm giving advice from my experience as an attorney, today is not to be construed as legal advice or creating any kind of attorney-client privilege between me and any of the viewers today or anyone who watches later. So with that, right? So the topic today is avoiding bankruptcy. It is really avoiding bankruptcy and keeping yourself and your finances in a place of strength and helping you, maybe give you some perspective on what to prioritize when things get tough, right? This topic and these kinds of issues are for everyone. So it doesn't really matter if you're flush with cash and you have plenty of money in your savings, 6 months worth of savings, right? Catastrophes and disasters hit us all the time, right? But let's say that you made it through this pandemic without having, to lose any income. You kept your job the whole time. But later, something could always pop up, right? Someone gets sick, or you lose a job, or somebody goes out of business, right? Something can always pop up. So these are tips really for everybody, people who are struggling, or people who are still doing pretty good and are still in a good financial place, right? So first, just a reminder, I have a couple of review slides, right? Bankruptcy itself, bankruptcy is not a bad word. It's a strategy. And there are a lot of misperceptions about those who file for bankruptcy protection. And we call it bankruptcy protection for a reason. The judges call it protection, creditors call it protection, right? It's to protect you and the money that you do have, right? So, and just a reminder, right? We can be like the wealthy and who use the bankruptcy protections when they need to, and they don't let anybody shame them into thinking it's a bad thing, right? When the wealthy need it, they use it without any hesitation. But that's not what we're here for today. So today we're going to talk about how to stay out of bankruptcy, right? And one of my favorite things to do as a bankruptcy attorney is when people come to me when they're on the verge or on the cusp of financial instability and are asking about bankruptcy, right? These are the people who see something coming at them and they want to have all the information that's out there for them to make the best decisions for themselves, right? The people who don't just kind of, get in bed and cover themselves with covers and just hope that everything kind of passes over them and they don't have to do anything, right? The people who do best in bankruptcy and out of bankruptcy are those who can see it coming and who are making plans for it, right? So I really do enjoy talking to people, helping them stay out of bankruptcy and avoid paying me attorney's fees for helping guide them through that process. Bankruptcy helps give us a fresh start, but sometimes we don't always need to reset our finances every time we get into a little bit of financial problems or getting ourselves into a little pickle. So that was a pep talk, right? So let's get to the focus of today's presentation, right? So we're talking about how to avoid bankruptcy and what you can do to stay on top of your finances or bills, right? And the first thing is to prioritize your bills. Whenever I have a bankruptcy client or a couple who's coming in to file for bankruptcy, this is the first thing that we do It's one of the most important parts of any bankruptcy, whether it's a 13 or a 7, is mapping out our budget, right? And prioritizing our bills, right? The number one priority is our housing, right? Where are we going to live, right? Is it a mortgage, right? Is it rent? It really doesn't matter what your housing is, but whatever your housing is, that it should always be your number one priority. It's always the biggest expense in our budget, right? There's other benefits, right, than just having a place to live, right? We're happier, healthier, we have more independence. When we have a consistent place to live, it offers stability and security for you, if you have a family, for you and your family. Psychologically, it gives us a place where we belong. Our neighbors become friends, usually, and we always identify with the neighborhood that we live in. So when things get tight, it's important that we always keep in mind that paying for our housing and staying current with our mortgage or rent does more for our overall financial health than just having a place to live. Right? And because our rent or our mortgage payments are usually the biggest bills, when things get tight, we look at that bill and that dollar amount, and we think about how many smaller bills can be paid with that money. And then, like most humans, hope springs eternal that we're going to make up that payment, that rent payment or that mortgage payment by the end of the month. Or we tell ourselves, next month, I'll just make 2 house payments. I'll make 2 rent payments, right? But unless there's some, magical tree that grows in your yard that gives you money whenever you need it, right? That's not going to happen, right? We need to be realistic about our income and all of our sources of income, right? If you have a job and you have a steady job, you know exactly how much your paychecks are. You know exactly how much you're going to make by the end of the year, right? So taking that bill, that important bill, and thinking we'll just make it up later when we don't have any additional sources of income is not realistic, right? So next is groceries, right? We need to eat. Make sure you have enough groceries for the week or the month, however you get paid, right? Don't make groceries an afterthought. Budget for it. Plan for groceries as a priority. And this one sounds kind of simple and it sounds kind of, well, of course, right? But it's really not, right? Because when we're worried about money or we're kind of concerned about how tight things are getting, we don't think about necessities. We're thinking about our bills, right? So the idea here is to refocus and really start thinking about priorities, right? If you don't have a place to live, if you don't have groceries in the refrigerator, you're not going to be able to go to work, right? We're not going to be able to keep going on and doing what we need to do to get out of the financial stress, right? Next would be utilities, right? We need power, we need water, we need internet, right? TV and television services, cable, satellite, those are not a priority. If you have the internet, you have entertainment, right? Everybody knows a family member with a Prime account and can log into their Prime account and get movies that way. TV services are just not a priority ever. And we shouldn't prioritize them over anything else, right? The power and water companies will typically work with you, right? If things are getting a little tight and we find ourselves getting behind, they're a little bit more forgiving, but you need to call them and you need to talk to them and you need to tell them what's going on, right? If you don't, right, they're just going to come shut off your utilities, right? They're not going to blow up your phone like credit card companies will, right? They're just going to shut off your power. They're just going to shut off your water. And now you have a bigger problem. So don't ignore those. Don't ignore your utility companies, right? And just like groceries, don't make utilities an afterthought that you pay. Make them a priority, right? And last on my list of priorities is car payments. So if we could go to the next slide. Okay, so car payments are the devil, right? I don't like them. Bankruptcy attorneys don't like them. Bankruptcy judges don't like them, right? When I graduated high school in the late 90s, car loans were 3 years. And to my horror, as a naive 18-year-old, people were starting to get 5-year loans on cars. The standard loan term right now is 7.5 years and well over 10% interest. Even those with the best of credit are getting, suckered into these long-term kind of car loans. Cars are status symbols, and we all have egos, right? But when things are tight, or even when you're out there buying a car, right? Check your ego, okay? That ego is what leads people into bankruptcy 90% of the time, right? A $20,000 car is going to get you to work just like a $75,000 car. A $5,000 car will get you to work just like a $75,000 car, right? There are alternatives to long-term car loans, right? Save up for a bigger down payment, right? Choose a different car. Choose something practical instead of something flashy, right? Buy something used, right? A fancy car, it really isn't worth our financial health. An expensive car is not worth your house, and it's not worth your ability to provide experiences or necessities for your children, right? I wouldn't even try to explain to me or an attorney or any, sensible person why you need an expensive car, right? And the reasoning that I hear all the time is, but I need a reliable vehicle, right? That really is an excuse. And it's an excuse that we give ourselves on why we need an expensive car, right? But we can do the math, right? So maintenance on a $5,000 car or a $20,000 car will never equal just the car payments you're making on your status symbol car, is what I call it, right? Ego equals bankruptcy, or ego, I'm sorry, equals bankruptcy, right? And I carved out car payments because honestly, when I do bankruptcy work, cars are the hardest thing for people to give up. Cars are the most difficult thing and talking about cars and trying to come up with alternatives for cars is one of the most difficult conversations with people, because cars is what everybody sees. People see you driving a car. They don't see you driving a house, right? 95% of the people will never see your house, right? Houses widely can be status symbols, right? For those of us who are lucky enough to have lots and lots of extra disposable income. It's the cars that people get super emotionally attached to. So I said things today that are harsh, right? But my point is, cars, they are a necessity, and we do need them. We need them to get around, right? Especially in places like San Antonio, where we don't really have any good forms of public transportation. Where things like taxis and Ubers and Lyfts are expensive and they're cost prohibitive. Having our own car is important, but having, a 50, 60, 70, $1,000 car is not what's important. What's important is that we're able to get around, we're able to get to work, able to get home, able to shuttle our family around to whatever it is they need to get to. So. And then finally, credit cards, right? Or I guess next, credit cards, right? Credit cards are trouble, right? They have a huge impact on our overall credit score, but should be the lowest of priorities for payments when things get tight. Right? When we start having financial difficulties, we do use them to pay for necessities, right? And that's why at the beginning, right, prioritizing housing and groceries, right, our necessities, is important to pay for first out of our income, right? Out of the money that we know we have, those are the things to pay first, right? But they're also the most aggressive creditors, right? If you don't pay your mortgage, they're going to foreclose on your house, right? They don't need to call you, like how teenagers, blow up each other's phones all the time. They don't need to, right? They might give you a couple calls, but then they're going to send you a certified letter and they're going to say, catch up, or we're going to take your house, right? Same with car creditors. Car creditors will get pretty aggressive too, but not as aggressive as credit card companies, because they'll just take your car. And a lot of car creditors now can just shut down your car, so you can't even drive it, right? But credit card companies, they'll call you sometimes dozens of times a day, beyond the times even allowed by law, right? Because nobody ever knows what protections they have, right? And they're just going to keep calling, and those phone calls are very stressful. And they'll come in incessantly, and blocking one of their numbers doesn't matter, because they'll just, auto generate a new number and just keep calling, right? So I get how stressful they are, right? But on the other hand, right, these are the creditors that will sue you, right? And lately, and through the pandemic, while everybody else was having sympathy, mortgage companies and car companies, and working with people, credit card companies began suing people, and began suing them pretty consistently and pretty aggressively, to get judgments, because judgments are good forever, right? So I do understand how stressful it is, right, to get sued and to go through that process. And most likely, if we can't pay our credit card bills, we also can't pay any lawyers to help represent us, right? So I do understand that. But you don't need credit cards to survive, right? If we've already prioritized our housing and our groceries, right, and our utilities, we don't need credit cards to survive. We want them and they're convenient, but we don't need them, right? At the end of the day, don't prioritize a lawsuit over your home, right? Don't lose your home because you're going to get sued for a $5,000 balance to American Express, right? Don't do that. Don't prioritize a lawsuit or this fear of a lawsuit over getting groceries, right? And don't prioritize getting sued, over your vehicle, right? Because we need the vehicle, right? If you owe the money, they're going to get a judgment, right? But they can't take your car. They cannot garnish your wages, and they cannot put a lien on your home, right? So while a judgment sucks, right? If things are tight, that's something you can always take care of later. But it shouldn't be prioritized over the other things that you actually need to keep yourself going, right? Always keep in mind what's best for your family, right? Is it best for your family to lose your house, but you paid the credit card bill? Okay. Is it best for your family to take the bus or get rides from family and friends because you paid the credit cards over your car payments, right? That's really for you to decide, but I guarantee the correct answer to both of those is no. Right? So one other strategy for keeping yourself out of bankruptcy could be consolidating your credit cards and loan balances, right? But there's a couple of things to keep in mind when you do this, right? Will it actually reduce your total monthly payment amount? So if you add up all your credit card bills, and all your credit card bills, minimum payments add up to $1,000, and you consolidate, and your new payment will be $500 a month, that's $500 back into your family budget, right? But if the monthly payment is going to be $1,500, then it's going to hurt you and it doesn't benefit you, right? What's the interest rate? And then how long is the loan term, right? But at all costs, right? Do not steal from yourself, right? Do not take out cash from retirement accounts. Don't cash those out. Don't take out retirement loans, right? There are tax implications with that, and the IRS will ruin your life a whole lot faster and a whole lot longer than any credit card company will, right? So when things get tight, don't look to those long-term strategies that you have for yourself, your retirement accounts, you're right, for your future self. don't look to those to solve very temporary problems that you have right now. Now, and I've seen this a lot, and I've seen it a lot lately, and it keeps getting worse, are these scams, right? And the most common scam right now is that there's a company, usually not in Texas, right? Texas has some pretty good protections for consumers, but it's usually an out-of-state company that promises to negotiate all of your credit card balances and loan balances if you pay them a monthly fee, right? This is a scam. Don't do it, right? Don't pay anyone anything to deal with your debt for you. What they're doing is you pay, say, $500 a month, and they tell you to stop paying your credit card bills. Just stop, right? While they negotiate, they're not negotiating. They are waiting until you have, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 that you've paid them, and then they're waiting for everything to go to collections, and then from collections, they'll try to negotiate there. And I talk about that a little bit later in the presentation, but this is not a good strategy. This is not a good thing to do. And so now, on top of your money problems, you're giving away more money every month for someone to deal with problems, right, that really are temporary. So watch out for these scams, and tell people, oh, I saw this presentation with Cibolo, and they said that those consolidation things, programs are a scam. Maybe I should call her, or maybe I should ask about it. If things are getting to the point where you're thinking about something like that, right? But just don't do them, right? So another strategy to keep yourself out of bankruptcy is to try credit counseling. Credit counseling is required for everyone who files for bankruptcy anyway, but some of these companies are really good. They're the legit ones are nonprofits, right? And they're going to help you learn how to manage money. They're going to give you some tips, and they're going to give you some general budget help, right? This is a skill, and like any other skill, we can learn how best to do it and how to get better at it the more we take care of it, right? You'll leave a credit counseling session with a plan to pay off debt and budget your finances, right? But keep in mind, right? Don't let anyone sell you into debt management plans or anything to help negotiate for creditors on your behalf, right? Unless you're in bankruptcy, right? You don't need anybody to negotiate anything on your behalf with your creditors. But I'll get back to that in a little bit, right? You get a holistic view of what's going on with your finances in these credit counseling classes. And they're usually maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours, but they're packed with a lot of useful information, right? Okay. I did want to touch briefly on these kinds of loans. I think back in the 90s and early 2000s, maybe mid 2000s, they were called payday loans. Basically what they are short-term, high-interest loans. Because of their short-term nature, they're allowed to charge you interest into the thousands of percents. When I see them, it's typical to see somewhere between 3,500% interest to over 10,000% interest, because you're supposed to pay these things off in 2 to 3 months, right? And what they do, and what these companies are doing, is they let you, what is it? I forget the term that they're using, but they let you just take out a little bit more money, and you just continue the loan, right? You just keep renewing that loan, right? And then you get stuck in it. And these companies require, auto deposits from your checking account. So they're sucking out money before you can make your mortgage payment or your rent payment or buy groceries, right? They're tempting, they're enticing, but they're really dangerous. And these will hurt your credit, and they're going to just eat up all of your income, right? And it's going to be hard for you to see where all your money is actually going. And this goes back to something I said earlier, right? You're not going to magically find money to pay off these debts. Money is not going to appear. You will not win the lottery. So by taking out these kinds of loans, you're really digging yourself deeper and not thinking strategically about your money. They're very tempting, but they're worse than credit cards and they're more aggressive. Okay, so if we're in a position we can't pay those credit cards, maybe things are going to collections, negotiate with creditors yourself, right? Many of us don't realize that we can negotiate on our own behalf. You can settle your own debt, right? And again, stay away from companies who do it for you, right? You can come to an agreement with a credit card company or with a collections company to pay less than what you owe. That's absolutely okay, right? Excuse me. One of the things I hear a lot is, well, I know I owe the money, and it's the right thing to do if I just keep paying for it, right? Right. It is the right thing to do, right? We took out these loans, we should pay them back. And credit cards are basically loans, right? We should pay them back, right? But there's nothing, and there's no law, and there's no moral law against going back and renegotiating and paying less than what they say you owe, right? There's nothing wrong with that, right? So while these credit card companies and collection agencies call incessantly and usually do things that are not legal, in these phone calls with you, they threaten you with legal action, right? Implying that you are going to be arrested. The legal action is a lawsuit, right? And we talked about that earlier, right? Lawsuits are scary, but at the end of the day, it's more important that we make our mortgage payment and our car payment and our utilities, pay for our utilities and groceries, right? You should take it, if you're getting incessant calls from credit card companies or collection agencies, take the opportunity to ask about settlement options, right? Let them make the first offer. You don't have to take it, right? You can always counter with something that's more realistic for you and your budget, right? You should always be thinking about what's best for me, right? What can I afford? If I settle this credit card debt, am I still going to be able to make my car payment? And am I still going to be able to make my mortgage payment, right? These are things we have to keep in mind. And if they're not offering something where you can continue to pay your priority bills, you don't have to accept anything, right? If you still don't have the money to pay after negotiating, ask about payment plans, right? They'll insult you. They'll say mean things to you. They'll hurt your feelings, right? But so what? Right? You don't know these people. Get over it. Let them be as mean as they want, right? And get through it and get a good deal for yourself, right? Insulting you, calling you bad names, calling you a deadbeat, I've heard them all. These people don't know you. These are strategies that they're using to get you to pay everything you have in your bank account to them instead of to your mortgage or car payment or groceries, right? So keep that in mind, right? They don't know you from Adam. You don't know them, right? If a settlement term doesn't make sense for you and your family, you don't have to take it, right? So other things to consider, right? If you're hitting a tight spot financially, right? First and foremost, and all the time, check your ego, right? Get a temporary second job, right? Take a weekend job. And it's right now there's people, employers are throwing money at people because they can't find anybody. Right now, if you've been struggling, is a good time to get a second job for a short period of time, right? Send your kids to go mow lawns, right? Have your kids make and sell doggy treats, right? Or you do it, right? Does your spouse work, right? They need to. Everybody needs to pitch in when the family is hitting a tight spot, right? Now, along with vehicles, having a stay-at-home parent is a status symbol for a lot of people, right? I don't know why, right? I don't know the thought process behind it, but it is, right? And what I tell people is don't try to convince me that childcare is going to be too expensive when you haven't priced out childcare. You haven't looked at part-time childcare. You haven't asked family or friends if they can help, right? Watch kids while we take a second job in the evenings or on the weekends, right? And don't tell me that your spouse isn't going to be able to make enough money, right, to pay for childcare and contribute to the household expenses if they haven't applied to anything, if they haven't been offered anything, right? Don't say no to your spouse working before you guys have actually fleshed it out and seen what's out there and seen what's available for your spouse, and see what's available, if you have kids or kids that are too small and need to stay at home, right? Don't tell me that, right? Almost 100% of us live in a town with family and friends, right? I would venture, unless you just moved to a town, right? That all of us have family and friends, right? So if it's something temporary that we need, we need an extra job for a short period of time, check your ego and ask family and friends for help, right? There's nothing wrong with that. And most people will help you and want to help you.
And sometimes even having a second job it's fun. Adelita and I knew a lady who worked on the weekends and she thought it was wonderful. It wasn't the stress of her daily job. She wasn't having to answer the questions and make the high level decisions that she made in her director job. And she was just working sales on the weekend and got to meet a variety of people. And she said her second job was her stress relief. So it is not always a negative thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And sometimes these part-time jobs lead to career opportunities. So, yeah. And that's it. So that's what I have for you today, right? It's the end of the presentation, but not the end of your financial health, right? I've gone over a lot. Some of these topics I could have gone into even more, minute detail, right? But if you ever have any questions, my email is there. I'm pretty accessible. You can reach out anytime.
Thank you so much for all the information, Adelita. We'll see you next week.
Yes, yes, ma'am. Thank you, guys.
Bye.